Hey there, Wolfpack fans. It's me again, Kenton Gibbs, bringing you another episode of Locked On Wolfpack. And folks, we have a very special guest in the house. It is always great to have fellow members of the Locked On Podcast Network in the house. And it's even better when I can get a knowledgeable member. Not saying that all aren't knowledgeable, but a particularly knowledgeable member about college sports ad nauseum or as at large, and his college, which happens to be Boston College. Now, we're going to get into what's going on here. But before I do, I've got to introduce you all to my guest for the day, AJ Black. How you doing, AJ?
Kenton, thanks for having me on. Really looking forward to talking about this game because it's one that I think it's one of the best games of the ACC this year.
Absolutely. And not only do me and AJ share the Locked On Podcast Network, but AJ and I also share that we both wrote for Sports Illustrated at one point in time.
Yep.
So that's another thing that me and AJ have in common. Hopefully, we have a lot in common today. But I got my fighting gloves ready. If we got to duke it out this episode, I'm ready to do that. Okay. In the words of Ricky Bobby, I play for keeps.
I'm ready for a good one. Let's go for it, Kenton.
Alrighty. So what we're gonna do in this episode is a little bit different than anything I've ever done before. But again, you make special, as they say, you make exceptions for exceptional people, and AJ Black's nothing short of that. So we're gonna go position group by position group breakdown, and then we will do the predictions at the end. So first of all, let me start by saying I agree. This game has all the potential in the world to be a great matchup, and I've said all along, even before we lost to Mississippi State, but especially after. The next 3 weeks after Furman will tell us what this NC State team is made of. My listeners your regulars, you've heard me talk about this ad nauseum. I've talked about Clemson being, are we ready for the big moment? Louisiana Tech for can we bounce back or can we recover from a win in the big moment? And Boston College being the team that at that point, if we win both of those games, we will be the hunted instead of the hunters. So with that being said, it'll be very interesting to see how we react to a team that is a little closer to our level physically, of course, in Boston College, who's always been a physically big team. So with that being said, we're going to start this thing off in the trenches, okay? Because I'm a former lineman, former defensive lineman. I love to get it going in the trenches. Like I said, we're going to do offense, special teams first, then defense, then predictions. So, offensive line-wise, who do you think has the edge in this matchup? Whose offensive line do you say theirs is a little bit better, ours is a little bit better, or is it a push?
Wow, you went right for the jugular on this one, Ken, because this is these are the two best offensive lines I think in the ACC right now. I love what NC State has up front. And I think BC is returning, 5 hogs up front that are very good as well. So for me, it's a push. But what I think the big difference here is NC State's defensive line will give BC's offensive line more of a trouble than BC's defensive line against NC State's offensive line. So I think in the end, you'll see a better, cleaner game out of the Wolfpack than you will out of BC. But I still think they both will have a good game.
See, this is the problem when you have folks that are very serious about what they do on the show. Because I was hoping to get them to say some malarkey and some nonsense just so we could disagree. But I absolutely agree that this is a push. While Ika Makwandu is one of the best and most feared offensive linemen in the nation, while Grant Gibson is one of the best centers in the nation, as a whole, when it comes to what makes an offensive line good, I mean, physicality and the ability to just maul people is something that Boston College has had back to the Adazio days and even before that. I don't ever remember a time where I thought to myself, the weakness of this Boston College team, their offensive line can't block a soul. I don't ever remember that being the case. And so, with that being said, they're, like you said, returning 5 guys who have playing experience, who are big physical guys in the system that they're running, especially with Jerkovich going down. I'd have to say it is a push. So, from the big guys, we're going to go to the smallest guys on the team, or generally the smaller guys on the team. We're going to go out wide with it. Receiving core wise, who do you think has the edge? And pass catchers are included in this, so tight ends as well.
So I think it's like I'm gonna be such a lousy guest, Kenton, because I'm going again with a push here because Amika Amizi I like a lot, but I also like Zay Flowers. He's one of the most dynamic wide receivers in the ACC. BC has Trey Berry, who's a preseason, not sorry, he was an All-American
FCS All American. Yep.
last year. And they've got some really nice complementary wide receivers on BC. So that being said, I like the wide receivers at BC. However, I give the edge again to NC State because I think I like how Devin Leary can get the ball better to them than I do with Dennis Grosel.
Here's the thing. I think if we're talking about in specific situations or just best for best, I would honestly say that Zay Flowers is a guy that his big play potential and what he can do with the ball in his hands would make him better than anything we have pass catching wise. I think that he is the best talent wise receiver or pass catcher that we're going to see in this game. But here's my caveat here. After him, I get a lot of drop off. Trey Berry is a good pass catching tight end. Like you said, FCS All American. He's no joke. But with that being said, his inability to be attached to the end of the line of scrimmage as a blocker, it's gonna hurt Boston College a little bit because the recipe for Boston College winning this game is Garwo left, Garwo right, Garwo up the middle. That's the recipe. And with a situation where I'm looking at, I don't know if you can be trusted as a blocker on the edge to block a Daniel Joseph, to block a Drake Thomas, to block a Vi Jones. It's going to be tough there. So I think that NC State has the edge because of the depth. Because you go from, I'm going to say Zay is the best pass catcher, but then after that, the next three guys I think are all NC State. I think you got Emeka, I think you've got Devin, and I think you've got Thayer. And then you might get Trey. Yeah, no, I think it's fair to say you get Trey Berry being the fifth best in this game. So that's what I'm looking at as far as that goes. And that's why I'm going to give NC State the nod.
But don't sleep on Jaden Williams, though. He's a true freshman wide receiver. He's got 3 touchdowns already. I think I totally agree he's not in the top 4 there, but I think he's a name you'll want to watch out for because he is a good complement to Zay Flowers.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. The thing about it is, what people often forget to realize is when you have a dynamic playmaker like Zay Flowers, he opens it up for everybody else because you're going to double him. You're going to double him. If you want to play him one-on-one all game with this attacking 3-3-5 we've got, go ahead and strike up the band. I don't know what Boston College's fight song is named, but just go ahead, get them ready. It's what?
It's for Boston.
For Boston. Get for Boston ready because they're going to be playing it all night. And so you open it up for the gentleman that you just mentioned, for the Trey Berrys of the world, and that's the situation there. So now we'll go to the backfield. What are you thinking is the logic here?
So I this is what I like about this game is that there's so many good matchups here. Ricky Persons and Patrick Garwo, I think are excellent running backs. I like how these teams set up. I think, obviously you said it already, like BC, they're going to be, they had to adjust what their offensive scheme was going into this game, going into the season after Djokovic went down. They were going to go into this game, into the season with, 4 wide receivers, Trey Berry, they're going to spread everything out, try to let Djokovic pick teams apart. He goes down. All of a sudden now BC's back to being a power running team again. It kind of like back to those old Adazio teams, or to the Tom O'Brien, or some of those older teams. And Patrick Garwo, I have said it over and over again on my show. I was dead wrong on how good he is because I said at the beginning of the season, and I heard from his dad because his dad sent me a message like, "Hey, you're sleeping on my son," and I said, I just haven't seen enough of him, but I have been so wrong about what he's able to do. He's really impressed me, and I think he's a good complement to what BC is wants to do. But I think both teams are going to be able to run this ball, and I'm excited to see who has the edge. I'm going to give the edge a little bit to BC here, but it's not by much.
Here's my thing. I think that when you're looking at the backs in this game, it's really 1A, 1B, 1C. Ricky Persons is by far the strongest, most powerful back of the three.
Yep.
Bam Knight is the most explosive of the three, but Garwo brings a good combination of both, and he's the most consistent of the three. I think that it'd be fair to say, game in, game out, he has been good at finding his spots, except for, I want to say, against Clemson, he had a real tough time. And there was another game that you all dominated in, but it was, I want to say, he had about 17 carries for like 30-some yards. Or
by Temple, I think.
Temple, yes. Temple did a great job of reeling them in. But even in that situation, he didn't give the ball up. And to me, Bam has put the ball on the ground too much this year for me to say he's head and shoulders above these guys. And Ricky has displayed a little bit of everything. He's displayed a do everything type of thing. But Garwo has done that as well to an extent. And he's been very consistent in doing so. And at the end of the day, in all the important games this year, the offense will go as Garwo goes. So the offense being placed on his shoulders and him still performing, that says something there. But 2 is better than 1 at the end of the day. 2 is better than 1. If we're talking about who I would see the most production out of their starting back, I wouldn't be willing to bet my house that, there's no way that Garwo outproduces our starter. But when you're talking about 2 guys who can do a lot of everything, or who can do a good chunk of the different things you'd ask a running back to do, I'm gonna go ahead and say, hey, at the end of the day, I'm gonna give NC State an edge there because we've got 2 guys, and even beyond those 2, I think that Jordan Houston at times when he's been called in very limited stretches, he's looked very good as well. So the last spot that we're going to go, and I saved this one for last intentionally because I knew it would be the shortest, is quarterback. Now, I'm going to jump in and start this one off by saying it's not really fair because y'all's guy is gone. The actual guy is gone. Grossell isn't terrible. I don't think he's bad by any stretch of the imagination. But I think he's like average, maybe a little below average at times. But I don't think that he's a bad quarterback in any way, shape, form, or fashion. But Devin Leary is just a guy who has shown, and I believe that he's shown consistently, he's going to put the ball where it needs to go. Early in the season, he struggled with accuracy a little, or not accuracy. He struggled with the ability to throw the deep ball early in the season, which was very surprising for me because that's supposed to be Devin Leary's specialty. But then when you realize getting back into it off of a broken leg and having the ability to throw the ball deep in live game time situations for the first time in almost a calendar year, you're gonna be a little rusty. And he's kind of figured that out. He's thrown a lot of great deep balls that have been dropped this year, but I think that we've got the edge in the quarterback battle by a decent amount.
Absolutely. I would agree with you there. And I think Boston College fans are still struggling with, what was the last play that Dennis Grossell did was cost them the game against Clemson. That was a brutal way to lose a game, to fumble a snap like that. He is what he is. He's not, he's had games. He threw for 520 yards against Virginia last year, but he also has maddening games where he threw in a triple coverage in the first pass of the game against Mizzou. He gets a little too excited at times. And so a game against a divisional rival, if you want to call them a rival, or a team that has a good history against BC, at night with a loud crowd, I worry a little bit about his ability to control his emotions, because he gets himself too excited and he makes bad reads and he makes mistakes, because if he settles in, he's okay. You saw that on that last drive against Clemson. Grossell just saw what he took, saw what he had in front of him, took what he could get, and he moved them down the field. But Absolutely. Then he got a little bit excited, and then things fell apart. And so I totally agree with you, Kenton. I would say Devin Leary is a clear favorite over Grossell in this game. And it, for Boston College fans, they keep going back to should have been Djokovic, but you got to play with what you got in front of them. And Grossell is better than a lot of backups in the league at this point, but he's not Devin Leary.
Trust me, as a guy who had to watch Bailey Hockman, who I believe is out of football altogether now, be the starter for a good chunk of our season last year, I understand. I can relate. And the Tom O'Brien Bowl is a big game. Okay, so don't let anybody lie to you and tell you it's not. Especially in a year like this where the ACC at large and the Atlantic is more open than it's ever been. I mean, this game now, if I got this correct, I believe you said offensive line is a push, wide receiving core, top to bottom. I believe you said NC State has a slight edge in that. Yes,
Yep.
no, okay,
Yep.
slight edge there. Running back you gave to BC, and quarterback NC State. And
Yep.
I agree with you on offensive line, receiver. I gave us a slight edge in running back, and we both agreed on quarterback. These picks so far have been easy. We'll see how this thing goes on defense, because I think defense is a little tougher, a little more dicey to gauge. But one thing that's always easy is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is a great daily college fantasy made easy situation. I love this, and I know you will too. Prize Picks is a leader in college sports daily fantasy. They offer more college football props than anyone in the world. And they offer all the star players of Power 5 as well as mid-major players that you might not have ever heard of. PrizePicks offers any prop you can think of, from yardage to touchdowns or even interceptions thrown. All of the users that use promo code Locked On will receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks is just you versus the projected numbers, and it is in both the App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. PrizePicks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. Don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com and use promo code LOCKEDON, or go to the App Store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Now, we were supposed to fit special teams in there as well. So I'm going to ask you about that now, because time got away from us there. But in special teams, I'm going to give it two different segments, or two different parts rather. Kicking game, return game. Okay? Kicking game, who do you believe has the edge?
I am a big fan of what Boston College has been able to do in kicking. Grant Carlson, their punter, has been an actual asset for them. He leads the ACC in kicking with averaging 48 yards per punt, I believe it is. And they have a new freshman punter who nailed a 49-yarder earlier. So I am a big fan of the way BC's kicking. I'll give them a little edge here.
You know, here's the thing. Normally, I would be hesitant to say, oh, our kicking team with Trenton Gill, there's somebody that's better than us. Our kicking team with this gentleman's name is slipping my mind. Our kicker's name is slipping my mind for whatever reason at this moment.
Christopher Dunn.
Thank you so very much for that. Normally, I would say, hey, Christopher Dunn, can't get much better. He went 80% in his sophomore year. Ever since then, he's fallen off a cliff, more or less. Against Clemson, had he done his job to any modicum or any degree of decency, it's easy. We're now looking at, oh, it's okay. We've got this game in the bag easily. So, with that being said, I think that this is a situation where not only is your guy leading, not only is Grant Carlson leading the ACC in punting yards, but he's just outside the top half in punts that have been downed inside the 20. He's got one more than Trenton Gill with his 9 to Trenton Gill's 8. And you all's kicker, the kicking situation over there, tell me about it a little bit.
So 6 for 6 on kicker. So basically they had Danny Longman, who's a senior, kind of a walk-on. He started the season 2 for 2. They had a 4 or 5-star kicker named Connor Lighton, who's a freshman. He had his first kick, which was a 49-yarder against Missouri to end the first half, and then hit another one later in the game. He's 4 for 4. So he's been lights out. And if you followed Boston College football, especially during the Adazio years, the place kicking was a disaster for BC. Mm-hmm. It was just, there was that Pinstripe Bowl game against Penn State where they missed an extra point in overtime. They've had those issues, but with Jeff Hafley there, they've kind of cleaned all that up. Their new special teams coordinator, Matt Thurin, who came from Ohio State, has really kind of put that program together, and it's been playing at a much higher level. So right now, they're 6 for 6 for field goals.
I'll tell you what. There's only 4 guys in the ACC that have not missed a field goal on the year, and 2 of them belong to Boston College. I got to give Boston College the nod in the kicking game. Return game. What are you thinking?
I would go with NC State here. BC has a guy, Travis Levy, who's been at BC seemingly for 6 years now because of the COVID rules, who is solid. He had a good kickoff return touchdown against UMass, but he earned ACC Player of the Year week for that. But I was stunned with that because 2 plays before that, he also took a punt to the face and fumbled it that UMass took to the 1-yard line. So he's kind of inconsistent to me. He's also not anything super spectacular, so I would go with NC State here.
You know, I'm going to give us the nod as well in that regard, only because Thayer Thomas can do some special things with the ball in terms of punt returns. We don't return kicks at all for the most part here, which is, interesting. It's a choice, but we do well enough with it. So overall special teams, I will say that Boston College and NC State are looking like Boston College is taking a slight edge there. I'll give the Eagles a slight nod there. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, slight edge. If it's a defensive battle with punting, I think that's a good sign for BC with Grant Carlson. But if it's on kick returns and the ability to move the ball, watch out, because I could see NC State making some big plays there.
Oh, absolutely! If this game turns into a track meet on a football field, I think that we'll be all right. Although I don't think that's how this thing will play out. But now let's talk about defense. I always got to show love to my big fellas. Always got to show love to the trenches. Defensive line wise, who you giving the edge to?
I'm going to give the edge to NC State because the biggest concern for me going into this game for Boston College is their ability to get after the quarterback. They've gone games and games and games without a sack. And, the one weakness that we've seen with Devin Leary is if you get in his face and you can rush 4 guys and get to him, you can make plays, but BC doesn't have that. They don't have the Harold Landry, they don't have the Zach Allen, going back even more like BJ Raji that can do those types of things. Marcus Valdez is a good defensive end, but he can't do it alone. That's going to make BC have to blitz to get after Devin Leary, and I think that's going to cause bigger issues. I think NC State's, defensive line, they're going to be able to do more things against BC, especially with Grosel, who seems to get into some issues when there's a guy in his face. So I'm going to give NC State the edge here.
The thing that I find so interesting about this defensive line matchup is as a defensive lineman, I don't like the 3-3-5 at all. It is a despicable defense, if you ask me.
Yep.
But NC State has surprisingly found a way to generate pressure with 3 players a lot this year, which it may say something. That may be an indictment of some of the offensive lines we played, which I don't – of all the teams that we played so far, I think that by far Boston College is the best offensive line. But it may say something about what our defensive line can do as far as getting upfield and disrupting, because losing an Aleem McNeil, you lose a guy who – makes game plans fall apart in the run game, and he had a little pass rush juice as well, but we are now more disruptive up front, which is very, very interesting there. So I agree that I think we have the better defensive line. Now, linebacking core, what say you, AJ?
So if Peyton Wilson was still healthy, I would give you guys the giant edge here. Again, with BC, BC's defense is it's there, but it hasn't evolved to where Jeff Hafley wants it to be. He's a defensive-minded coach. He wants things to go a certain way. He's evolved the linebacking group to a different style than Boston College has been used to. You're used to seeing at BC guys like Luke Kuechly, Mark Herzlich, the big physical linebackers that can move all over the place. He's going for a lot of these tweeners now. So guys that can play safety, the guys that can play linebacker, and adding them into the mix to what he's doing. So they have Isaiah Graham Mobley back there. He is a transfer from Temple. He's definitely the most talented guy in the front seven for BC.
Absolutely.
I love the way he plays. He plays with his shirt's on fire. He's definitely doing very well. And then next to him will be Cam Arnold, who was a safety last year. They moved him to linebacker. Also very good. The big issue for me with linebackers, they're playing very well, but in pass coverage, they've been an issue, and it's been something that I've seen a lot with Hafley. Like the middle of the field, for a lot of the times, they've had some problems with some of that short and intermediate stuff. And I think that's an issue. And I like the way I've been impressed with NC State's defense for years now. I think they've had even when you lose the potential defensive player of the year in Peyton Wilson, they're still playing well. So I'll give it to NC State.
And the guy who was supposed to win player of the year last year because he had more solo tackles than the guy who actually won it had total tackles. Very interesting fact about that ACC player of the year race last year. But anywho, back to this game. So I think that our linebacking core has an edge because, like you said, even without Peyton Wilson, we still have two guys that are top 25 in the conference in tackles in Drake Thomas and Isaiah Moore. And a lot of people said the 3.35 inflates your linebacker stats a little bit, but Drake Thomas and Isaiah Moore are both guys that they do so many things so well. And it's not only that. I don't believe that just fighters make fights. It's the styles that make the fights. And the thing about Boston College and their tweener linebackers is they are very good when asked to come downhill, because when people look at you and say, oh, this is a transformed safety, he's probably not going to be as big as what I'm going to see. They instantly develop that complex of, oh, really? Watch this. And they do it well. When those guys are coming forward downhill, they do it well. The problem is, like you said, when they're asked to drop back, I'm not saying that y'all linebackers turn like Buicks, but it's not as what you'd like to see hip mobility wise out of your starting linebackers in the ACC. So I agree. I agree that NC State has the edge there. The last unit, defensive backs. What are you thinking?
Okay, so I am my soft spot for BC football this year is their secondary. I'm going to give it to BC because Jeff Hafley, that's his bread and butter, right? Mm-hmm. He's a secondary coach. He coached Richard Sherman, Darrell Revis. Those are his guys, and you saw it against Clemson. I know DJ Uiagalelei, he struggled and he does not look like the same quarterback, but BC last week or 2 weeks ago against Clemson made it very clear to those wide receivers that they were not going to let them do anything. And Clemson's wide receivers were like, hey, I'm backing off on this. They did not look interested in making plays when it was there. Yeah. So I like Brandon Sebastian. I like Josh DeBerry. And this is going to be my homer pick. I'm going to go with Boston College on this one. I like how they're playing. I think they're going to be a good group. And, if BC has a chance, this is the group that needs to play very well.
So here's the thing. A lot of people have said that I've been too hard on our DBs, and I don't care. I'm going to continue to do so because I tell people reality. I don't sell fairy tales here. I don't do that. Never have, never will. If you want a bedtime story, go to Disney Plus. They got a ton of them. They're very good. They're very quality stories. This ain't the place. Borders closed down a long time ago as well, so you can't go there no more. You better find your way to a Barnes & Nobles or Disney Plus because we're going to tell you reality here. And honestly, our defensive backfield has been good. I'll say they've been good at times, but there have also been times where I'm like, young man, what are you doing? That receiver is nothing special, and you don't know what to do in the moment of truth. Yep. The thing that I will say is a huge improvement from last year. We have not seen the same amount of busted coverages, which goes along with us not having the same amount of injuries on the back end and us having an experience or more experienced secondary than we had last year. So that's a given. They've done a good job for that. I know people say don't applaud a fish for swimming, but last year, this fish was out of water. So we're going to be happy that they swimming. But with that being said, Boston College's defensive backfield has shown up big time all season. All season. Right? And granted, I tell people oftentimes about Boston College, the books are a little cooked because some of the teams, some of the competition they played against, Clemson, like you said, their offenses look disjointed all year. The receivers didn't make plays when DJ did put it in the right spot. For whatever reason, their offensive coordinator loves running that quarterback power that takes 3 years to develop in the backfield. And they just seem disjointed. They have fumble snaps, all that other good stuff. They had a tough time. Boston College's defensive backs contributed to that. The only game where I don't think that Boston College defensive backs look great was against Missouri. But guess what? These are 18 to 22-year-olds. Nobody's going to have a great game all the time. Even Nick Saban down there at Alabama. There was a lot of charges getting revoked after last week. I'm just saying.
And they didn't have a good game, but how did Boston College win that game? They won on an interception by Brandon Sebastian in the end zone where he outleaped, Missouri's wide receiver to get it. So, they weren't consistent that whole game, and I totally agree with you because I was as watching that, you're like, what the hell is going on? But at the end of the day, they made the play that they needed to make to win the game.
It was like the Packers-Cardinals game where both offenses were moving up and down the field, both put up 50 points. How did it end? Carlos Dansby with a fumble recovery touchdown. Same situation here. Same situation.
Yep.
The defensive backfield made plays when they had to. I don't know if our defensive backfield makes that play. I'm just saying. Even if we look at the game against Clemson, that pass to Justin Ross could have been placed better, and he still could have caught that ball. That was more so Clemson not being prepared for the big moment to make that play than it was us. He just didn't seem very interested in laying it all out for that pass. So, I agree. I give Boston College a nod there. So we both got Boston College defensive backfield as being better. We both believe that NC State has the advantage in linebackers and defensive line, correct? Or no?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Right on board with you there.
Alrighty. So I think that we're in unison for most of this, but we've still got predictions coming. Don't worry. The build-up will be worth it. And another thing that's worth it is Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar ever with 9 amazing flavors plus the occasional limited time flavors. If you haven't tried Built Bar yet, you're missing out. I don't know what to tell you. They've got coconut almond, cherry, raspberry, mint brownie, peanut butter brownie, double chocolate, salted caramel. You name it, they've got it. So there's something for everyone. My favorite is the grasshopper cookie. It's a limited timer, but man, that thing is delicious. Not only are these bars good to you, they're good for you. With up to 17 or 18 grams of protein per bar and only 130 to 180 calories per bar with only 4 to 5 grams of sugar or net carbs. Again, all of these numbers are not per serving, and there's 5 servings per bar. This is per bar, folks. So these things, whether you want to lose weight or maintain your weight, whatever goals you have, you can accomplish them with Built Bar. Order today and get that raspberry mint brownie or whatever it is that you like. Go to BuiltBar.com and use promo code LOCK15 and you'll get 15% off your first order. Again, use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. So we're about to land this thing. But before we get up out of here, AJ, I need your prediction on this season. Okay? Not on this season, on this game. You've got 2 4-1 teams coming in. Who's going to come out 4-2 and who's going to come out 5-1?
Okay, so I have 2 hats I'm wearing here, Kenton, because, first of all, if you look at the statistics, right, I would take NC State in this game because I think Devin Leary, to me, is the difference maker. I think he gives them the edge in this game, and I think he'll find what he needs against this defense. Now, that being said, Alumni Stadium on a night game is weird. And that's the only way I can put it. It's a weird place to play. Weird things happen. Boston College has won games against USC, Florida State, Miami. They win games at night, and it's going to be rainy and gross. So for me, it goes down to the running backs, and it goes down to the offensive line. So it could be anyone's game. And that if everything is similar there, for me, the home field advantage gives the edge to BC. And so I'm going to give Boston College the edge based on a night game at home with the conditions that they're going to be at, because I'm looking at it right now. It says it's going to rain all Saturday. I think they're going to get a little slight edge here. It's going to be a crazy game. I'm expecting an exciting one, something low scoring, something like 24-21 BC.
Okay, all right. I'm going to tell you this, and I hope that nobody takes this the wrong way, because anybody who's ever been to any Boston sporting event should know this. Boston College fans talk a different level of trash. Like, it's not like, oh, you guys suck, or like, oh, your team is terrible. They research who you are as an individual. And the things that they say, I cannot repeat on this show because I want to keep my clean rating. But there was one incident where something was said, and I was just like, yo, how you know that? You the FBI? Y'all in the FBI? What's going on here? And I'm going to leave it at that. And that can get into a player's head. But everybody says that this NC State team is super mature. I have said all along that these 3 weeks will determine who this NC State team is. And honestly, with everything we've seen this year, with the witching hours that we've seen this year, I think NC State being stable has been against everything that we've been for years, is going to be one of the byproducts of that. I think that I agree that we'll see a low-scoring game. I think NC State comes out on top, 27-17. I think that'll be the score. We will see who's right. Now, I've picked against NC State once this season, and they showed up for a win. I've picked with them 3 times this season, and I've picked with them 4 times this season, and they only let me down once. So who knows how this thing will go. We love to see it. Anywho, thank you so much, AJ, for coming out. I appreciate it, man. It's been a great episode. I got to have you on more. I'm going to have you on during basketball season because apparently y'all's coach, everybody loves him. Everybody loves y'all coach who spoke to him at Media Day. So we got to talk about that. But it was great having you on, AJ.
Kenton, thanks for having me on. I had a great time. And yeah, definitely it'll be a different experience when we talk basketball, because Boston College, they've got, as you said, Earl Grant is definitely going in the right direction, but they've got some roads to go. And they're going to be in the bottom of the ACC probably this year, but we'll have some fun talking about it anyways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you all so very much for coming out and listening. I appreciate it every single time. The numbers keep going up only because y'all choose to come out and listen to this podcast. We're probably your first listen in the morning, and I appreciate that, all right? Peace and love, y'all, and as always, go Pack.